Jalen Milroe is an amazing quarterback on his feet. People are going to have a really hard time containing the guy running the football. Now, you are obviously leaving yourself open to injury and things like that whenever you're taking off with the football at a high rate, just like he did last year. I mean, this offensive line didn't do great protecting him last year. I think he was sacked 40. It was between 40 and 50 times last year. It was a lot. And part of that was Jalen getting out of the pocket and trying to run with the football, and I understand that. Getting tackled behind the line, that's a sack. But I haven't seen enough development from this guy, Mason, for me to buy into the Jalen Milroe hype that I feel like a ton of people have bought into. I get it. He can run the football. I understand that. And he's probably the best running quarterback in all of college football this year. But with all that being said, the intermediate passing game is just not there. It is not good. This offense looks like a very potent running offense. Jam Miller, okay? I am very high on this guy, okay? Justice Haynes looked good, okay? Yep. Richard Young looked really good. He might have looked better than Justice Haynes. I mean, let's just be real. That Richard Young looks like a very physical back. So, with that being said, the offensive line I thought looked really good. They were good at running the football last year. This offensive line pushed. That's what, if you want to look to one thing and point at it that cost Georgia a possible championship last year, it was Alabama's offensive line pushing the Georgia defensive line around in that SEC championship game. And at the end of that game, particularly. This is going to be a very potent running attack from Alabama. I think the wide receivers are a little bit better, but I don't think that it's some kind of 2020 wide receiver core, Alabama. You think about a guy who, won a Heisman as a wide receiver that year. I don't see that. A guy named Jeremy Bernard. If you go back and watch, you'll see that Jeremy Bernard is a guy that transferred over from Washington. He's a wide receiver. He seems like he's a couple steps ahead of all the rest of the wide receivers in the group, and that makes sense, right? He comes over with the new head coach, Kalen DeBoer, so already knows his system, very familiar with that. So, yeah, I mean, that's understandable, but boy, he was the go-to guy in that wide receiver corps. So that's something interesting and something to look at. Another guy named Cole Adams, kind of like a slot receiver, smaller guy. I believe that was him. That's him right there that just made that catch, number 13. He had a good day. I like him as well. I think that's going to be a decent piece. But there's a problem with this whole formula, I feel like, and you're not going to be able to be one-dimensional, I don't think, and win a national championship. I think Alabama kind of ran into that last year, and everybody can say, oh, it was one snap away, blah, blah. I get it. Okay. But Georgia was one snap away from losing this game or blah, blah. You can say that about any football game, y'all. Okay. But my point is, you're not going to be able to be one-dimensional and go win a national championship. And this team looks a little bit too one-dimensional to me as far as offensively. Defensively, boy, oh boy, can you see clear as day that Nick Saban is not coaching this defense. Okay? And look, during this broadcast, I'm not the only one that's saying this. During the broadcast that we have on the screen right now, they were talking about how much different the culture is around Alabama. Okay? And I believe it. I totally believe it. They say walking in the front office is totally different now. I mean, everything is way more relaxed. Everything is much more player-oriented, player-friendly. And that guy that you see on your screen right there, Nick Saban, that was just not his style, man. He was an authoritarian figure in that football program. He was the guy. And And he made all the calls. He made all the decisions. Mason, could you imagine trying to take over a program from the best coach ever and he just won't go the hell away? Dude, he's there every day.
Yeah.
They just asked him in that interview that you were just watching, what he thinks about the team. Well, we need to hit the transfer portal and blah, blah, blah. Dude, shut up. You've got to disappear a little bit, man. You've got to go off into the distance a little bit and go, golfing with Miss Terry or ride your pontoon boat or whatever the hell it is that you do in retirement. But how is this whole situation supposed to move on from him if he's there every day? And it's just, I don't know, it's weird. It's weird to me. It kind of, what it kind of reminds me of? Kind of reminds me of Phil Fulmer at Tennessee.
Right.
Old hog jaws that just would not go away and eventually got Tennessee busted on a bunch of recruiting stuff. But I say all that to say this. This defense was arm tackling like crazy. There were multiple plays where there were multiple blown tackles, missed tackles. And it did not look anything like a Nick Saban defense in that regard. So I think this offense would be pretty good like last year. I think this offense is going to be pretty similar to last year, Mason. But last year they had a much better defense than what they do. The linebacker core is lacking, and that secondary is starting from scratch. And the outlook on this team is not grim. I'm not going to be the one to sit here and say Alabama's losing 5 games this year. I don't think that's the case. But they're sure as hell ain't going undefeated. And I think 10-2 is a stretch. I think 9-3 is very reasonable for this team this year. From what I've seen so far, and I reserve the right to change my mind if Alabama goes and gets some players in this portal. But they got to address the defense if they're looking to make a title run in Kalen DeBoer's first year as head coach. What's your thoughts on that, and what do you think Alabama's got to do to get back to the promised land? It's been a while since they've won a national championship. So Nick Saban didn't just leave after just winning one. It's been a while. So now you got to pick up the pieces and try to get back to the promised land. I'm not so sure they can do it this year. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, a national championship is going to be a bit of a stretch. Can they get to the playoffs in a 12-team format? Absolutely. I haven't flip-flopped on a team more than Alabama this year. I'm really not sure how to take them. I'm probably not going to say anything else about how I feel about the team until we get closer to the season, because I don't freaking know. I don't know that I won't know until I see them on the field, right? Realistically. Yeah. But my vibe on them is that they're going to be pretty good. And I do think that they will make the playoffs. I think that this is going to be a team that gets better as the season goes on. They're not going to be perfect, but I think 10-2 is reasonable when you take a look at their schedule. It's not that bad considering the talent that they have. Could be worse. So, I'm interested in seeing what they put onto the field, but Alabama is a team that can definitely win some football games, especially with Kalen DeBoer calling the offense right initially until they get their offensive coordinator, who's I'm blanking on his name right now, but once they get him up and going, I think maybe next year. Nick Sheridan. Maybe next year he starts taking over a little bit more of the offense and controls. And then, eventually he's going to be probably one of the best offensive coordinators in college football. Just like Grubbs, who just left for the Seattle job. So I if that tells you anything, it should tell you that I have a lot of faith in Kalen DeBoer. I think you should too. But I also don't believe that this is the year that they get it done. And I don't know that anybody's really putting that kind of pressure on Alabama this year. I think if they make the playoffs, that's going to be a successful year for Alabama and their fans. As harsh as they are, they're going to have a little bit of grace with Kalen DeBoer. If he doesn't make the playoffs this year, nobody's going to be running after him with pitchforks and torches or anything like that. He'll have a couple of years to figure some things out. But I think in year 2, you got to make the playoffs. Like, there is that kind of pressure realistically. But, I don't know what to think necessarily in year 1, but Alabama will be a good football program again under Kalen DeBoer.
I don't doubt that they'll be good. I don't doubt that they'll be good. One thing that I have to kind of sit and think about, and we've got all off season to figure it out, or the rest of the off season. What wide receiver core and quarterback tandem is going to be able to take advantage of this rebuilt secondary? And I think that is where you'll have your answer to who can beat Alabama this year. Alabama's playing Georgia. That's going to be a really tough game for Alabama, even though it is at home. That's going to be a really tough one because that wide receiver core is so deep. I think that's going to be really tough to handle. And not to mention with the deficiencies at linebacker, LSU going to be a really tough team to deal with. Does LSU have a defense that can slow down Alabama's offense? Probably not. So that's going to be, probably. I think that's going to be a really good game. I think that's going to be a styles make fights type of game. We'll just have to see. I think there's several. Doesn't Alabama play Missouri this year?
Yep.
Missouri's got a really good offense,
and Oklahoma. I think people are going to be sleeping on Oklahoma this year a little bit, but they won't be come November 23rd. I guess that'd be week 12 of the football season. Oklahoma is going to be in good form. That's going to be probably a really good matchup there, and could decide for both of those teams to go to the playoffs. I mean,
our grandpa will be at that game.
Well, he'll be there. He's
going to that game. My dad is taking our pop to that game in Oklahoma.
Holy cow. That'll be amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got free tickets already. Got them.
Wow. Well, good for him.
Stuff.
But yeah, that game is going to be absolutely amazing. And, I know it's the next to the last week of the regular season, but I think that's a really good test for that secondary, and probably a good matchup. Oklahoma probably doesn't have the receivers that they've had in the past, right? But I really like what I've seen out of Jackson Arnold so far, and I'm sure that one of these receivers are going to emerge. And also, I think the defense is getting better under Brent Venables. And not to make this an Oklahoma show, but I circle that date. If I'm an Alabama fan, I would circle that date and say, that's one we got to go away with the win.
Well, and you heard it here
they can
first.
sneak up and get you.
Deion Burks is going to be hard to handle. That's the Purdue wide receiver that transferred over to Oklahoma.
That's right.
This guy had a coming out party last year, and I think he's one of those late bloomer guys. And as you said, this isn't an Oklahoma video, but I think he's one of those late bloomer guys where things clicked last year. And I think you're about to see him explode onto the scene, probably with, I'm thinking, close to 1,000 yards this year. So I think that he's going to be a very, very important piece to that Oklahoma offense.
You heard it there, Alabama fans. Deion Burks is going to absolutely torch you guys, and he's going to win the game for Oklahoma. So just leave your comments to Mark. Direct it directly at Mark in the comment section and tell him how wrong he is.
Yeah. No Bama fans watching this. Whatever. We're not blowing enough smoke up their ass. They're not going to be watching this.